You have a deadline, it matters. You know it matters. And yet you're scrolling through your phone, reorganizing your desk, doing anything but the one thing you need to do. Why? Your brain is treating that important task like a physical threat. That's not a metaphor. Neuroscience has proven that when a task carries emotional weight, your brain activates the same neural circuits as physical pain. The insular cortex lights up, the amygdala fires, and your entire nervous system screams one word: avoid. Avoid the pain. This is not laziness. This is not a character flaw. This is a survival mechanism that has gone haywire in the modern world. And today we are going to dismantle it piece by piece. We'll explore why your brain sabotages you precisely when the stakes are highest, what emotional patterns are driving the avoidance, and most importantly, how to rewire the entire system. As Timothy Pychyl, one of the world's leading procrastination researchers, put it, procrastination is not a time management problem. It is an emotion regulation problem. By the end of this video, you will never see procrastination the same way again. The pain switch. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a cold pool. You know the water is fine once you're in. You know you'll enjoy the swim, but your body refuses to jump. That hesitation, that visceral resistance, is exactly what happens in your brain when you face a task that truly matters. In 2013, researchers at Case Western Reserve University used fMRI scans to study the brains of chronic procrastinators. What they found was startling. The anticipation of a dreaded task activated the insular cortex. That's the same region that processes physical pain. Your brain literally cannot tell the difference between the discomfort of starting an important project and the discomfort of touching something hot. The pain is real, even though the threat is imaginary. And here's the cruel irony. The more important the task, the more emotional weight it carries. Writing that business plan means risking failure. Having that difficult conversation means risking rejection. Finishing that creative project means exposing your deepest self to judgment. Your brain doesn't see a task, it sees a threat, and threats must be avoided. But this avoidance comes at a devastating cost, one that compounds silently over time. And that brings us to something even more disturbing: emotional debt. Every time you avoid a task, you don't eliminate the stress. You borrow against your future self. Psychologists call this the procrastination doom loop. You feel anxious about a task, so you avoid it. The avoidance gives you temporary relief, a small hit of dopamine, but then the guilt sets in. The deadline gets closer. The anxiety doubles. Guilt, shame, anxiety. And now, not only do you still have to do the task, but you also have to deal with the emotional weight of having avoided it. It's compound interest, but for suffering. Pychyl By, a professor of psychology at the University of Sheffield, studied this cycle for over a decade. Her research revealed something profound. Procrastination is essentially irrational. People know they're going to be worse off, and they do it anyway. But it's not irrational from an emotional standpoint. In the moment, your brain is solving the most urgent problem it perceives, the emotional discomfort right now. It trades long-term well-being for short-term emotional survival. Your present self keeps stealing from your future self. If this pattern is starting to feel uncomfortably familiar, you're not alone. And speaking of this, what if I told you that the roots of this pattern go far deeper than you think? Childhood roots. Here's where it gets deeply personal. Your procrastination pattern didn't start last Tuesday. It was installed years ago, often in childhood. Developmental psychologists have found that children who grow up in environments where performance equals love develop what's called contingent self-worth. Conditional. Their value as a person becomes tied to their output. Get good grades, you're loved. Fail, and you're invisible. Now fast forward to adulthood. That important project isn't just a project, it's an identity test. If you try your hardest and fail, it doesn't just mean the project failed. It means you failed. It means you're not enough. So your brain chooses not to try at all, because at least then failure has an excuse. This is what psychologist Martin Covington called self-worth protection theory. You procrastinate not because you don't care, but because you care too much. The task becomes a mirror, and you're terrified of what you'll see. Fear of being seen. If this is making you rethink your own patterns of avoidance, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring the depths of your psyche with me. Because what comes next explains exactly why this gets worse over time, not better. Perfectionism trap. You've probably heard people say they procrastinate because they're perfectionists, but that's only half the story. True perfectionism isn't about having high standards, it's about having a catastrophic relationship with failure. Perfectionists don't just want to do well, they believe that anything less than perfect proves they are fundamentally flawed. Imperfection equals annihilation in their mind. And so, faced with a task where perfection is impossible, which is every task that actually matters, they freeze. They rewrite the first paragraph 17 times. They research endlessly without starting. They wait for the perfect moment that never comes. As Brené Brown observed through years of vulnerability research, perfectionism is not the same thing as striving to be your best. It is the belief that if we do things perfectly, we can avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. The perfectionist procrastinator isn't lazy. They're armor-plated. Every delay is a shield against potential criticism. They'd rather be seen as someone who didn't try than someone who tried and wasn't good enough. The perfect becomes the enemy of the done. And this armor, as protective as it feels, leads directly into the next trap, one that silently poisons everything. Shame spiral. Here's the part nobody talks about. Procrastination doesn't just create practical problems, it creates a shame identity. You start seeing yourself as the person who can't follow through, the person who always starts and never finishes, the person who lets everyone down, including themselves. I am broken. And shame, unlike guilt, doesn't motivate change. Guilt says I did something bad. Shame says I am bad. Researcher Brené Brown spent years distinguishing between these two emotions, and the difference is everything. Guilt can actually push you to do better. But shame paralyzes you because you believe the problem is who you are. So now, the next time an important task appears, you don't just face the task. You face the entire history of every time you've failed to start, every deadline you've missed, every promise you've broken to yourself. The emotional weight isn't just about this task anymore. It's about your entire self-concept. The weight of 1,000 unfinished beginnings sits on every new start. And this shame spiral has a silent partner that makes everything worse. It hides in your phone, your Netflix queue, and your social media feed. But what I'm about to reveal is the mechanism that keeps you trapped. Dopamine hijack. Your brain has a reward system, and modern technology has learned how to exploit it perfectly. When you avoid an uncomfortable task and open social media instead, your brain gets an instant dopamine hit. Small, easy, immediate reward, the important task that offers delayed, uncertain reward. And your limbic system, the ancient emotional brain, will always choose the immediate payoff over the delayed one. 1. Important task equals uncertain future reward. 2. Scrolling equals instant dopamine now. 3. Your ancient brain always picks option 2. This is what behavioral economists call temporal discounting. The further away a reward is, the less your brain values it. A deadline 3 weeks from now might as well be 3 years from now to your limbic system. Now beats later always. But here's what makes this truly insidious. Every time you choose the easy distraction over the meaningful work, you strengthen that neural pathway. You literally train your brain to avoid difficulty. The avoidance becomes automatic, hardwired into your neural circuitry. You're not just procrastinating, you're programming yourself to procrastinate more. As philosopher William James wrote over a century ago, we are spinning our own fates, good or evil, never to be undone. But this brings us to the question that changes everything. Identity crisis. Why does procrastination hit hardest when the task matters most? Because important tasks are identity tasks. Think about it. Nobody procrastinates on brushing their teeth. Nobody delays making a sandwich. These tasks carry zero emotional weight because they say nothing about who you are. But the tasks you avoid are the ones that define you. Writing that book means declaring yourself a writer. Starting that business means declaring yourself an entrepreneur. Having that honest conversation means declaring yourself brave. And declarations are terrifying because they can be disproven. Exposed. Psychologist Hal Hershfield at UCLA conducted fascinating research showing that people perceive their future selves as strangers. When asked to imagine themselves in 10 years, the brain activation patterns look almost identical to thinking about a completely different person. Future you equals stranger. So you're being asked to suffer now for someone your brain barely recognizes. No wonder you resist. The task demands you bridge the gap between who you are and who you could become, and that bridge is built over an abyss of uncertainty. But what if I told you there's a way to cross that bridge? It starts with understanding something most people completely misunderstand about motivation. Motivation myth. Here's the biggest lie you've been told about procrastination, that you need to feel motivated before you can start. This is completely backwards. Motivation doesn't precede action. Action precedes motivation. Behavioral activation theory, a cornerstone of cognitive behavioral therapy, has demonstrated this repeatedly. When depressed patients were asked to simply begin an activity regardless of how they felt, their mood improved after starting, not before. The act of beginning generates the neurochemistry you thought you needed before beginning, yet we sit around waiting to feel ready, waiting for inspiration, waiting for the right moment. You don't have to feel like doing something to start doing it. Pychyl calls this the primacy of the present self. Your present self only knows how it feels right now, and right now it feels uncomfortable, so it waits, and the waiting becomes its own form of suffering. The secret is to start before you are ready. The ancient Stoics understood this principle deeply. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire while battling his own resistance, wrote something that cuts through 2,000 years of noise. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. No motivation needed, just duty, just beginning, and this principle connects directly to the most powerful antidote to procrastination. The 5-minute key. If procrastination is an emotional problem, then the solution must be emotional too. And the most effective emotional hack is absurdly simple. Commit to just 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. Not 5 minutes of your best work, not 5 minutes of perfection, just 5 minutes of contact with the task. That's it. Why does this work? Because it bypasses the pain response entirely. Your amygdala fires when it perceives a large, threatening task, but 5 minutes, that's nothing. Your brain doesn't even bother mounting a defense. You trick your survival system by making the commitment too small to fear. And here's the beautiful part. Once you start, something remarkable happens. The task almost never feels as bad as you imagined. Research by psychologist Dan Ariely at Duke University showed that the dread of a task is almost always worse than the task itself. Your imagination is a worse enemy than reality ever was. The anticipatory anxiety, the catastrophic thinking, the imagined difficulty, all of it dissolves the moment your hands start moving. 1. Set a timer for 5 minutes. 2. Begin without judging quality. 3. Notice the dread dissolving. 4. Continue only if it feels right. But there's one final piece of this puzzle, and it might be the most important of all. It's about changing not just what you do, but who you believe you are. Identity shift. The ultimate cure for procrastination isn't a productivity hack. It isn't a planner or an app or a morning routine. It's an identity shift. James Clear, in his research on habit formation, made a distinction that changed everything. He said there are 3 layers of behavior change: outcomes, processes, and identity. Most people try to change outcomes. I want to finish this project, some focus on process. I'll work for 2 hours every morning. But lasting change only happens at the identity level. Instead of saying, I need to write today, you say, I am a writer. Instead of I should exercise, you say, I am someone who moves their body. The shift is seismic, because when your identity changes, the emotional weight of the task changes. A writer doesn't feel pain when sitting down to write. That's just what writers do. The avoidance dissolves because the task is no longer a threat. It's an expression of who you are. Become, don't just do. Every small action becomes a vote for your new identity. Every 5 minutes of work is evidence that you are the person who shows up. And over time, the neural pathways of avoidance are overwritten by the neural pathways of action. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. This is not theory, this is neuroscience, this is psychology, this is freedom. So let's bring this all together. Procrastination was never about laziness. It was never about poor discipline or weak willpower. It was always about pain. Your brain was protecting you from emotional threats it couldn't distinguish from physical ones. Every avoided task was your nervous system trying to keep you safe. Every scroll through social media was a painkiller. Every excuse was armor. But now you understand the mechanism. You know about the pain switch in your insular cortex. You know about the emotional debt that compounds. You know about the childhood roots, the perfectionism trap, the shame spiral, the dopamine hijack, and you know the way out. 5 minutes of beginning, the death of the motivation myth, and the identity shift that changes everything. Begin before you're ready. The task that scares you most, that's the one your future self needs you to start today. Not perfectly, not completely. Just start. If you made it this far, comment pain switch if you now understand why you've been avoiding what matters most. The only task you truly fail is the one you never begin. Welcome to the Psyche Project. If this changed how you see procrastination, hit like and subscribe. Understanding yourself is the work of a lifetime. See you in the next video.